Iran and Oman have moved closer to finalizing a proposed framework for commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, reports say that the proposed agreement would grant Tehran significant authority over ships entering the Gulf via the Strait of Hormuz. If this deal is implemented, it would mark one of the biggest geopolitical concessions to Iran in recent decades. Before the war, the strait was open to all commercial shipping without fee. It would also mean that Hormuz would not return to its pre-war status, something that Iran has repeatedly mentioned. It may also signal a shift in the regional balance of power in Tehran's favor after the US and Israel started a war in February. Now, the proposed deal outlines a temporary 60-day arrangement with the option of an extension. All vessels entering the Persian Gulf would travel through a northern corridor in Iranian territorial waters. All vessels exiting into the Arabian Sea would travel through a southern corridor in Omani territorial waters, coordinated with Iran. No tolls, no service fee. None of this will be levied during the initial 60-day period. What happens after that remains a question. Iran and Oman would also work to clear naval mines from the strait's median lane within 30 days. But the big question, will the United States accept this new arrangement where they're not involved? Washington has not immediately responded to the reports. US officials have repeatedly said that they would not accept any arrangement that allows Iran to control the Strait of Hormuz. Still, Trump says that the negotiations are moving forward.
They called me and said, very politely, please, can we talk? Can we talk? They didn't want. And I said, yes, we can talk. Let's get it done. Finally, let's get it done.
Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance has warned that negotiations with Iran will be messy and they will take time. Speaking to Fox News on Wednesday, Vance said Iran's leadership is divided, with some factions seeking an end to the war while others want the conflict to continue. A senior Gulf official cited by CNN also said that the Iranian delegation negotiating with Oman does not include representatives of the hardline Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which would still have to sign off on the details of any provisional agreement. The official added that there is a 50-50 chance that Iran and Oman will reach a deal by Friday. Now, back in June, the United States and Iran reached a 14-point framework agreement that provided for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The reopening would be to toll-free commercial shipping for 60 days, but the agreement signed on the 17th of June effectively lasted just over 20 days. All right, my guest for Point Counterpoint is joining us from London, Jane Kinnenmont, CEO, United Nations Association. Jane, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for making time. Let's start right off. Do you think this deal, Iran and Oman, it would give significant leverage to Iran? Understandably, US has no role in this deal that is coming into the fray. Can it solve the Strait of Hormuz issue?
I think this is likely to be another temporary fix, which may be better than nothing. But I think that both the US and Iran do have an interest in trying to get shipping going again, especially as the US has midterm elections coming up this autumn. And Iran does want to be able to get more of its oil out and to get the US blockade off its ports. But I just don't think that this is going to be a stable settlement in the longer term for a whole bunch of reasons. And I think that you've mentioned in the report the divisions inside Iran, which are very real. We're also seeing quite a messy and unpredictable decision-making process inside the US. I think most factors point to, at best, a short-term solution for now.
Jane, on what basis do you call it even a short-term solution when the US is not involved? Will the US accept a deal where they're not involved and it's between Iran and Oman giving more leverage to Iran, even for a day, forget 60 days?
So we still don't know whether the US are going to go for this, as you rightly say. We'll have to find out in the coming days. But I do think that the US is likely to have an interest in getting shipping flowing, mainly for domestic political reasons. This war has been very unpopular in the US. It looks bad for Trump. It does affect global oil and food prices, which affect all of us. And Trump knows that voters don't like to see this in the run-up to the midterm. So my guess, which is just a guess for now, would be that something will be agreed and the US will try to take credit for it. But I think it's harder to see that being something that will last. I also think that Iran really is at risk of overplaying its hand. At the end of the day, this war has gone badly for the US. Because of strategic failures and blunders by the US itself in launching a war that was against international law, didn't have support of allies, and wasn't really strategically thought through. Iran seems to be drawing the conclusion that it has won, but it's not really Iran's strategic success. It is the US's strategic blunders. Iran has also often overplayed its hand. It's alienated its neighbours. Its internal decision-making seems to be facing problems. So I suspect that they're going to push for a deal that benefits them, which the US won't be able to swallow for the long term.
Jane, at this point, it's anyone's guess, given how erratic things have been. But if we were to engage further with your guess at this point, as we're all guessing at this point, what happens after 60 days? Even if the US takes credit for a deal which Iran and Oman achieve, if all of that happens, what after 60 days?
Well, there's a bunch of scenarios. I mean, clearly, Iran is going to want it to move into a new phase where Iran is able to make some kind of money on tolls or fees for using the strait, and Iran will want to use that to help its own budget. It has faced economic losses as a result of the war. That is going to be difficult for the US to swallow. There is also a risk that things could go back into conflict, whether because they can't reach agreement on this issue of tolls and fees, or because of other things that feed into this conflict. As your report mentioned, we're still seeing Israeli bombing of southern Lebanon. The Lebanon issue is one of several regional issues that could destabilize this agreement and mean that we go back to an ongoing conflict in this very sensitive part of the world. So I'm afraid I think that the tensions in this area are going to continue causing problems for the global economy and for global geopolitics for quite some time to come.
Also, Jane, even last month, when any unarmed vessel or a civilian vessel would come under attack in the Strait of Hormuz, we saw the US going after Iranian targets. Iran would go after the Gulf targets, and again there would be a new spiral of violence. This time we're seeing repeated attacks by the Houthis on Saudi tankers. We've also seen unarmed vessels being targeted in the Strait of Hormuz, but we're not seeing that reaction from the US. How do you read into it?
So I think that the US really wants to leave the Houthis to Saudi Arabia, although the more the Houthis get involved, that will be because Iran is pressuring them. The Houthis themselves, they were trying to pursue a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. They have a close relationship with Iran. Iran has supplied most of their military know-how, and it's an important backer. But at the end of the day, the Houthis also actually wanted to have a working relationship with Saudi Arabia that would allow them to stabilize their economy, pay salaries, and have a decent relationship with their largest neighbor. So in a way, the Houthis are being pulled into this conflict. If the US and Iran can reach an agreement, it would make it much easier to stabilize the Red Sea and prevent a full-scale Houthi-Saudi conflict breaking out. That also has implications going into the Horn of Africa, where you're seeing the conflict in where you're seeing the conflict in Sudan still ongoing. There's a real risk of a kind of arc of instability in all of these parts of the world being triggered by this ill-thought-through US war against Iran.
And what about the lack of the kinetic response from US in the Strait of Hormuz? How do you read that?
Trump is really in a bind because they are aware that, he came to the election process promising to be the peace president, the guy who would end the forever wars, etc. The US has not lost a large number of people in Iran because they haven't been involved in a ground invasion. But basically, they know that kinetic actions are not currently a good thing for public opinion in the US. And I think that Trump would like to get out of this war, but unfortunately the Iranians know that, and so they're pushing him to make concessions that he doesn't want to make.
You know, it's interesting, regardless of which camp we speak with, largely that's the understanding everyone now has. Donald Trump is largely stuck in this war. He needs to get out, but on a position of strength, which he's not finding. Iran has realized their strength over the course of these last 5+ months. Let's wait and watch how this one plays out for both sides. Jane, always a pleasure.